Hello and welcome to the first Rotherham Advertisers SportsChat Podcast of 2016. Let me start by wishing all our listeners a very happy, prosperous and healthy new year from all of the SportsChat team here. Joining me around the table today is Miller's correspondent David Beddoes.
Hello, happy new year.
And news editor Michael Upton.
Morning.
Thank you very much for your time today, gentlemen. Let's start off then, Dave, with the defeat to Preston. Not a happy start to 2016 for Neil Redfern. But overall, how was the game? Did Rotherham deserve to lose?
I don't think they did deserve to lose. I mean, I know Neil afterwards was speaking about, we need to be tougher, more resilient, but Rotherham were resilient. They got in front in the first half, shaded it. Second half, Preston threw everything but the kitchen sink at them. And they clung on and defended like you'd ask an away team to defend. They've conceded on sort of our mark, and then, of course, we've got that gut-wrenching own goal right at the end. The irony is that if Johnson Clark-Harris had dipped and let the ball drop over him, Lee Camp would have probably put his cap on it, which just adds to the woe, doesn't it?
Michael, then does that go down to I feel bad saying this, to a Lee Camp error for maybe not being more vocal, or is it, or do we never know? Is this one of them things in football where we never know what really went off?
I've seen it a couple of times, and I think even if Camp had the time to give him a shout and Clark-Harris had dipped out of the way, he wouldn't necessarily have been able to come out and cover that. And for all we know, there might have been it might have gone across goal and been stabbed in by a Preston defender. You've got to try and win those headers. It's just very unfortunate, especially for a player who's made so many good impressions lately. It's not quite like a Luke Hyme incident, is it? Where that great own goal he scored is probably what people remember him for. Thankfully, Clark-Harris has given people a lot of positive moments at the other end of the pitch.
Well, that's why it's quite strange, isn't it, Dave? Because Clark-Harris, over recent weeks in particular, has been known to come on and put himself about and influence the game in a positive way, whether that be holding the ball up for Rotherham while they're drawing or winning his headers or putting the pressure on the opposition back line when Rotherham have been behind. He's had positive impacts from the bench. And for Preston, for some reason, that just wasn't the case, was it?
It wasn't. You hardly noticed him. He wasn't showing for the ball. This was his chance. He came on, scored as a sub the previous week to come on, make a name for himself, although Danny Ward had done well. It's puzzling, isn't it, with Clark-Harris? I think he's a player who needs managing, whether it's an arm round the shoulder, whether it's a kick up the backside. He needs a talk and to get this talent, which he has got out of him.
Maybe Neil Redfern needs to look at that in training and practice long throws. Get it to the near post, try and find Clark-Harris' head.
Yeah.
A few goals to the right.
If it were at the other end, it would have been perfect, wouldn't it? Just moving on then slightly, let's have a quick look forward to next Saturday's game. Leeds United in the Cup, and the things that we spoke about several times before on this podcast. Steve Evans against Neil Redfern, both managers up against their former clubs, rivalry, war of words, everything that's gone before gets reignited, Dave, for this game, doesn't it? But on the football pitch, Rotherham are suffering from some injuries, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It's stacking up. Kelly is inching his way back. There's no guarantee he's going to be back for Saturday. Of course, Lee Frecklington went down the hamstring. 2 to 3 weeks for Frecklington out.
And he's been such a big part of Rotherham's resurgence, hasn't he?
He has, since he's come in, and Broadfoot started playing well. Rotherham have played well as well. And then, of course, we've got young Farron Rawson who went down again with an hamstring, so they're going to have to look at him. So it's mounting up. The squad's already thin. And there's no doubt he's going to up the urgency in the transfer window, of course, which we're talking about now.
Well, that's it, isn't it, Michael? We're at the start of January, that time that managers either love or they hate, depending on where they are in the league, I take. What business do you think needs to be done for Rotherham United? Where do they need to strengthen?
Well, a week ago we were talking about the need to avoid a Steve Evans style rash of loan signings that are short-term fixes but not long-term solutions. I'd still caution against going nuts on and signing loads of people, but I think, to be honest, in all positions, defence, midfield and attack could all do with strengthening if we can. Find somebody who'll come in for 4 or 5 months and get them through that tricky injury situation.
Dave, how vital is it that Rotherham keep hold of the likes of Farron Rawson, Grant Ward, Saturday's goalscorer Tony Andreu? The players who've made a big influence, aren't they? And class as first team regulars now.
They are. Grant Ward in particular, although he's a little bit quieter on Saturday. Rawson is well thought. I don't think Rawson stood out the last game or two. I think that's been Broadfoot at the back. And of course Andrea's had a renaissance, hasn't he, the last couple of games. No doubt he's made Neil Redfern think twice. So there's a lot of things to ponder over the next 1 or 2 weeks. A lot of dominoes to fall or whatever.
And along with that, these loan players who are at Rotherham were maybe looking at extending or signing permanently. There's also the loan players who are out at Rotherham United at the minute, which of course has a knock-on effect whether they can get rid of them permanently or till the end of the season. We're talking about people like Greg Halford, Chris Maguire, Adi White, these sort of players who maybe Neil Redfern's decided aren't part of his plans. It's time for them to move on.
Absolutely. I mean, but I know Barnsley are keen on keeping White, aren't they? Maguire's been playing regularly down at Oxford. So, I mean, Neil's going to see it as a chance if he can, move on one of these two places. It's going to give him more money for manoeuvre, isn't it?
That's right, Michael. And don't think you'd be too sad to see many of them names depart?
It's really strangely ironic, isn't it, that the greatest of respect to Adi White, he was Steve Evans' marquee signing in the summer. I was always a big fan of Steve Evans, but I do think these last 6 months transfer dealings left a lot to be desired. I think Greg Halford has made negative impressions more than positive impressions.
Everywhere he's been.
Adi White doesn't seem to have made much of an impression at all, to be honest. Very lightweight player. And so I think we've said that Neil has to set his stamp on the squad, and he can only be judged really when he's got a squad that he's happy with. And I think if there are players that are essentially just eating up wages, even if some other clubs are paying them, then they should be off the books. He needs to think about the future and not about Steve Evans' players and the past of the club.
Well, let's talk about one or two players who Rotherham own and who they've got who could be hot property in this January transfer window. Two of Rotherham's standout players who are both young players, Jonathan Clark-Harris, who we've just mentioned, and Joe Newell. Two players who've seemed to have stood up a little bit this season. Joe Newell's kind of replaced Ben Pringle in that creative role, put a lot of set piece in that Rotherham have scored from earlier in the season and come up with a few vital goals himself. And Clark-Harris, of course, seems to have everything that a modern day striker needs. It's just whether he decides to use them on the day or not. But Dave, they could perhaps have one or two players thinking. One or two teams thinking, sorry.
Could do. I mean, Newell, we talk about Steve Evans signing along with Lee Camp, a good, strong, late Evans-era signing was Joe Newell. And he seems to get stronger, doesn't he? He's week by week he's developing into a man again, and he's good on the ball, he adds real thrust to going forward. Maybe. I don't see much permanent movement out, to be honest, apart from maybe with the loan men. And I think this squad, it needs a tweak, it doesn't need major surgery.
Do you agree with that, Michael?
Absolutely. I think if you've only got a thin squad, as you alluded to earlier, you've got to keep it. You've got to keep the depth to it. There aren't that many strikers in this squad. And I think if, just to sum up, if rather than going to have a happy new year, it does need to be a happy Newell year.
There's a headline there, isn't there? Hey, he gets paid for this. Right, gentlemen, I'll thank you very much for your time this morning, and thank the listeners, once again for listening to our first podcast of 2016. If you want to join in with the debate, you can by tweeting us at Roughtisers Sport. Remember that the advertiser is out on Friday as usual with all the preview to the Leeds game and the reaction from the Preston game. Gentlemen, before we go, I just want to ask you for your predictions very quickly from the Leeds game. We'll start with you, Michael.
I think it's going to be a 1-0 win, back to winning ways, which would be important for league momentum too.
Dave?
I fancy Rotherham for a replay, so I'll go one apiece.
Right, so we're neither men think that Rotherham are going to go out of the cup on Saturday. Right, if you want to get your predictions as well, feel free to at Roughtisers Sport on Twitter, and thank you very much for your time. Thank you.